My wife told everyone I was broke. Not just struggling, broke. She said it at family dinners. She told it to our friends. She even said it to the lawyer during the divorce. According to her, I had spent 30 years working on useless hobbies and old cars that never made a dime. And to be honest, I let her believe it. For a long time. But the day she decided to sell my collection at auction, well, that's when things got interesting. My name is Robert. I'm 61 years old, and for most of my life I was a mechanic. Not the kind that works in big glass dealerships. The kind with grease permanently stuck under his fingernails. The kind who spent weekends inside a quiet garage with a radio humming old country songs. And the kind who believed that if you worked hard, took care of your family, and stayed loyal, life would return the favor. I was wrong about that last part. My wife, Karen, used to love the garage. Back when we were younger, she would bring me coffee and sit on an old stool while I worked on engines. She'd laugh when I got too excited about some rare carburetor or original chrome trim. "You love those cars more than me," she'd joke. I always answered the same way. Cars don't steal the blankets at night. Back then we laughed about it. Back then things were good. But people change. Or maybe they just reveal who they always were. It started slowly. Karen began complaining about money. Not because we didn't have enough to live. We had a house that was paid off. 2 grown kids who had already moved out. No debt except for basic bills. But Karen had started spending more time with new friends. Friends who drove expensive SUVs. Friends who talked about vacations in Italy and beach houses in Florida. Friends who had husbands in suits instead of oil-stained work shirts. And one night at dinner, she said something that stuck with me. "Do you ever think about doing something bigger with your life?" I wiped my hands with a napkin. "Bigger than what?" She gestured toward the garage window. "Those old cars. That junk." I didn't say anything. Because to me, those cars weren't junk. They were history. Every bolt. Every dent. Every faded badge. Each one had a story. And over 30 years, I had collected a few special ones. Nothing flashy on the outside, but the kind collectors dream about. The kind you don't talk about loudly. The kind you keep quiet. Karen didn't understand that. Or maybe she just didn't care. About 2 years ago, she started mentioning divorce. At first it sounded like frustration. Then it became a threat. Eventually, it became paperwork. When the papers came, the accusations were almost funny. Karen claimed I had wasted our finances on worthless vehicles. She told the lawyer I had no real income. She even said she had been the one supporting the household. That part made me laugh out loud. I had paid off the mortgage 15 years earlier. But I didn't argue. Not once. During mediation, her lawyer asked about the cars in the garage. Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Old junk. Maybe worth a few thousand total." The lawyer nodded. "Would you like them sold and the money split?" Karen shrugged. "Sure. Let him keep his toys if he wants." I looked at the lawyer. "I'm fine with that." Karen smirked. She thought she had won. In her mind, she was walking away from a poor old mechanic who had wasted his life on rusty metal. She didn't know something important. I had never bragged about my cars. Not to neighbors. Not to friends. And definitely not to my wife. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Karen called me. That was unusual. She hadn't spoken to me once since moving into a new apartment downtown. "What do you want, Karen?" "I've been thinking," she said. That sentence alone worried me. "About what?" "The garage." I leaned against the workbench. "What about it?" "Well," she said casually. "Those cars are just sitting there." "Yes. And you don't really have money coming in." I smiled. So maybe it's time to sell them." I didn't answer right away, because I could hear something in her voice. "Greed. Why do you care?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because technically, some of them were bought during the marriage." I almost laughed again. Karen had never once shown interest in those cars. But now suddenly she was curious. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "There's a classic car auction next month," she said. "I heard collectors come from all over the country." "Of course they do," Karen continued. "We could sell everything. Split the money." I pretended to think about it. "Everything?" "Yes." I looked around the garage. 7 cars sat under soft gray covers. 7 pieces of history. 7 secrets. Finally, I said the words she wanted to hear. "All right." Karen sounded pleased. "Really?" "Sure. If the cars are worth what you say they are, the auction will prove it." She laughed. "Oh, Robert, you're going to be disappointed." "Maybe." But not for the reason she thought. The day of the auction arrived faster than expected. The event was held at a massive exhibition hall outside the city. Rows of polished classic cars filled the building. Collectors walked around with serious faces and deep pockets. Some of them flew in from Europe. Some from Texas. Some from California. These people knew cars. They knew rarity. And they knew value. Karen arrived wearing a bright red dress and sunglasses like she was attending a celebrity event. She brought 2 of her friends. Both of them looked at me like I was a strange artifact from Karen's past. One of them whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "That's him." Karen nodded. "He collects junk cars." I kept quiet. The auction staff rolled the first vehicle onto the platform. It wasn't one of mine. But the bidding quickly climbed past $200,000. Karen's friends gasped. Karen crossed her arms. "Well, those are real cars." I almost smiled. An hour later, the announcer spoke again. "Next vehicle. Lot 47. 2 staff members rolled back a gray cover. Underneath was my first car. A 1967 fastback Mustang. Restored. Original engine. Original paint code. Numbers matching. The kind collectors wait years to find." Karen leaned toward me. "That one might actually get something." The bidding started. 70,000. Karen raised an eyebrow. 80,000. Her friends stopped talking. 90. 100. Karen looked at me. "Wait, what?" The auctioneer's voice echoed through the hall. 120,000. A man near the front lifted his paddle. 150. Karen slowly turned her head. The hammer fell. Sold for $168,000. Karen stared at the stage. "That's ridiculous." I shrugged. "It's a nice car." She laughed nervously. "Well, that must be the best one." I didn't correct her, because Lot 52 was about to roll in. And that one was the car I had found in a collapsed barn 32 years earlier. The car no one believed could be restored. The car Karen once called a pile of rust. When the cover came off, the entire room went quiet. Even the auctioneer smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carried across the hall, "you don't see one of these very often." Karen leaned closer. "What is that?" I folded my arms. "Just an old car." The bidding started at $200,000. Karen's smile disappeared. And that's when she finally realized something. She had spent 30 years living with a man she thought was broke. But the real surprise hadn't even reached the stage yet. If you made it this far into the story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, what do you think the final car will sell for?